Good morning, class. Today we're going to look at the conflict between the Aztec and the Spain after they meet. So we've looked at the worldview conflict. We know that the Aztecs are coming from a polytheistic religion. Spain is coming from a monotheistic religion. This causes massive amounts of conflict whenever societies differ this much in their belief of the creation and the afterlife. One of the most significant worldview factors for sure between the Aztecs and the Spanish was religion. Then you've got the Spanish concept of human sacrifice. They see the Aztec human sacrifice as barbaric, but if you ask the Aztecs, what about the massive amounts of lives lost for really human sacrifice of the Catholic faith? When you look at the several wars that were fought over that, when you look at the death toll, I'm guessing both teams are coming up pretty even. So here we look at Spain conquers Aztec. How did conflicting worldviews lead to the Spanish conquest of the Aztec civilization? So we know that Spain is expanding. In the early 1500s, Spain was expanding its empire across the Atlantic. They already established in Cuba and Hispaniola, which is Dominican Republic, Haiti Island. They began to explore the Yucatan Peninsula, which was Aztec territory. At any point here, you guys should be taking notes. So pause the video, jot down your notes, think about the brilliant things that I'm saying. Make sure you take note of them. Awesome. The Aztecs were at the height of their empire when they came into contact with Spain. So things were really, really good. They were at their peak. We know this guy, Hernan Cortez. He lived from 1485 to 1547. He was in his teens when he set off for glory, God, and gold, and he sought gold and riches in the New World. He ruled his conquistadors with fear. He wasn't a very nice guy saying, "Hey, if we go over there and take over those people, I'll buy everyone an ice cream sundae." It was, you will come with me or you will be hurt really, really bad. He was ruthless, he was murderous, and he was an expert strategist. So he can be awful and very smart at the same time, as we've seen lots throughout history. And he was willing to do whatever it took to be successful. He was even willing to wear that really funny outfit. How big is his waist right here? What's going on here? These look like shoulder pads that fell anyway. That's Hernan Cortez. So the Aztec Empire, here they are, Yucatan Peninsula. In the 1500s, the empire was at its peak. Aztec expansion was for the glory of Huitzilopochtli, so that sounds familiar to the Spanish worldview of for God, glory, and gold. They got rich from conquered groups paying tribute and taxes. So they start here, as you can see my cursor, in the Valley of Mexico on Lake Texcoco, and everywhere that is a darker shade was the Aztec Empire expanding. Now this was at their peak. This is at the height. Had the Spanish not come, we'd probably see all of this as Aztec territory, but you can see there are some holdouts. So not everybody was conquered by the Aztecs. They had booming trade within the empire. Makes sense. You need a market for your widget. You go and take over that market and then people will buy it. So lots of trade. When people were taken over, the societies were not slashed and burned. They were not decimated. A lot of the men would have been taken for human tribute, for human sacrifice. The rest of the society would be able to carry on. If you kill everybody, what's the point? You just get their property, but you don't get all the resources of human labor that's on there. So they had lots of fresh captives from all of this expansion to sacrifice to their gods. So here is what two soldiers would look like. On the left, you've got a conquistador. You'll notice the weaponry. He's got a musket, steel helmet, steel chest plate, and then you've got sort of this cartoon version, but it shows relatively the vulnerability compared to the Spanish with the armor and the Aztec without the armor, and of course this club with the obsidian, which we saw is very dangerous, but you have to be pretty close. The musket is not overly accurate, but you can be a lot further away. And take note of the date, 1519. So, the Aztecs' understanding of the Spanish. This is where the worldviews clash, is how they see each other. So Aztecs heard rumors of light-skinned, long-bearded, short-haired men on floating towers. So think of seeing a ship for the first time and having no concept of a boat bigger than a canoe that would hold some goods and a few people, to seeing these massive sailboats. That would be quite the jarring thing to see. So floating towers, especially you're seeing them from a distance. This description reminded them of one of their gods, Quetzalcoatl. So there's something in the teachings about Quetzalcoatl that was about light-skinned, long-bearded, short-haired men on floating towers. Very, very specific. The Aztecs believed in signs and omens, and throughout Moctezuma's rule, there were many scary omens warning of disaster. They thought Quetzalcoatl was returning to reclaim his throne. So if you're the leader and you think a god has come back to take over their throne, I'm thinking you're not going to like that. You're going to be probably pretty scared. So here are the omens, and we're going to finish with the omens. Every time I hear this, I think of the song I Saw the Sign. I'm thinking we should probably, as a class, write a song about omens, about I Saw a Sign. Anyway, 10 years before the Spanish first arrived, a flaming ear of corn crossed the sky and seemed to bleed drop by drop. So this is probably what it was. It was probably a shooting star or a meteor. Probably a meteor. If it's slower, you can actually see it. Shooting stars are too quick to see anything like that. So probably a meteor, but it wouldn't be explained. You don't see these very often. So that would be something that the document keepers would have taken note of. The second omen, the temple of Huitzilopochtli just burst into flames, and no one claimed to set fire to it. Apparently, it just spontaneously combusted. We know that spontaneous combustion can happen. If you've got a compost pile in your backyard, you know that it could actually light on fire at any time if you're not careful, because of the heat generated there. This happens in farmers' fields with those huge hay bales. If it's too hot and too dry, those can just suddenly spark into flame. So perhaps somebody just left something really dry and really smoky out. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. The third omen. A temple was damaged by a lightning bolt, but there was no storm, and it was only drizzling that day. We've probably all seen lightning in the middle of the day. Maybe, maybe not. It's rare to see it. Whenever I think of a lightning storm, it's dark out because then you see the lightning. But of course it can happen at any time. It doesn't wait until the lights are off. So my guess is that was just a weird warm day with low atmospheric pressure. Or is it high atmospheric pressure? Ask your local weatherman. The fourth omen, fire seemed to stream through the sky while the sun was still shining. It had a long train and was divided into 3 parts, giving off a shower of sparks. Again, some sort of atmospheric, science-y explained thing, I'm sure, but of course you don't have the science at the time. You might think it's an omen from the god. I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. All right, the fifth omen. Wind came from far and seemed to boil the water. The water rose up and flooded houses. This is probably just a really windy day, I'm guessing. Again, different weather. Perhaps they hadn't been there long enough to document all the weather. Sometimes you see these things and you don't write it down. Sometimes you do write it down. But when you're finding all these omens, perhaps you're writing them down. The sixth omen, people heard a woman weeping at night telling them they should flee. I've seen enough horror movies to know that you should run. You hear a woman weeping in the woods and you can't see her, you run. Blair Witch Project, you don't go into the house. Why would you go into the house? Why would you even go camping in that forest? You're going to go just stand in the house where the ghost is rumored to kill people? Oh, that sounds like a good idea. And then wham! You see your friend standing in the corner. Don't do it. This painting here is by a Spanish artist, Pablo Picasso. That's called Weeping Woman. I figured that was appropriate for this scenario. Not sure about the perspective here. Considered high art though. Very good. Actually, 1 second. I took an art class and I did a Picasso. I think the teacher thought I was cheating because we were supposed to pick something from the Renaissance, and I said, I want to do something modern. Oh, okay. It's easy when it looks like that. The seventh omen. A strange bird was caught, and it had a mirror on its head that would show Moctezuma different things, like people moving across a distant plain, like an army, and riding animals he did not recognize, probably horses. No one else saw these visions. I couldn't find a picture that would really explain that. A bird with a mirror on its head? That one, I don't know if it has a scientific explanation. Maybe there is some magic at play here. The eighth omen. Monstrous creatures with two heads appearing in the streets of the city. When they were taken to Moctezuma, they vanished the moment he saw them. So apparently these creatures were roaming the streets of the city. They were captured because, again, giant monsters. Hey, let's go get them. And as soon as Moctezuma saw them, they vanished. So I think at this point, if I was Moctezuma, I'd be a little bit worried. That's just me. So some of these omens have a simple scientific explanation, and others, I would say, not so easy to decipher. And you may turn to religion, you may turn to magic, you may turn to anything. Science fiction writing, maybe, to explain what these omens were. So that's where we're going to stop today. This is laying the ground for how Cortez, with so few men, were able to take down an entire empire at its peak. I wonder if he had help. Stay tuned. We'll take this up later.